Do you do a lot of interviews, Richard?
A fair amount at the moment, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you're. I stumbled across you. It must have been 7-8 years ago. Spartan Life Coach, and I was so struck by you because you're one of the few kind of masculine men in the mental health space,
Right.
and I felt similarly. And I didn't have anybody really that I could look up to or connect with or feel like I could relate to. So you were somebody that was very interesting to me for a long time. And I guess, what I like to find out is a little bit just about your story, like
Sure.
how you got here, why you got here.
If you have time to give me some therapy, it might help.
Yeah, well, maybe we can. Have you done a lot of therapy? I mean, I guess you're an autodidact that you just read and figure it out.
I did do a degree in psychology.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, but it was in behavioral psychology. And to be honest with you, I didn't know the difference when I got to university. And then I found out after the first year, I was like, oh, we're going to do an awful lot of putting rats in T-shaped mazes here. And if you mention Freud or Jung, you would be scowled at.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. It was no, there was no therapy. The psychotherapy was seen as, you may as well have said you were doing like yogic meditation, chanting or something. It just wasn't. It wasn't a thing to talk about in my degree. So I did do a degree in psychology, but when it comes to anything to do with psychotherapy, personality disorders, yes, it's self-read, it's self-learned.
But you've done some therapy.
I'm in
before.
therapy now, yeah.
You're in therapy. How long have you been in therapy?
On and off since 2009.
How's it going?
I love it.
You do?
I do. I have a great therapist. His name's Jason. And I've been working with Jason since 2021. And it's fantastic. I'm boring. I'm a proselytizer of therapy. I keep saying to people, you must go to therapy. But if you're going to go, you have to tell your therapist the truth and you have to tell them everything.
Right. And you have to have a good therapist. I don't know if you paid attention to what was going on Twitter last week, but no. Matt Walsh, he was talking about the uselessness of therapy, and it became for a day or two this big debate. And I understand from their point of view. I think a lot of therapy is academic, and maybe particularly men, conservative men, and that's who was talking about it, don't feel seen or understood by a lot of the therapists who are graduating from institutions that are sort of woke, and maybe they don't feel seen as men. But you've had a good experience. What when proselytizing, what do you say to people? Why should people go to therapy?
Let's make sure we come back to the men and the conservative men particularly. But why?
Absolutely.
Why do I proselytize? Because certainly in the last 4 months of doing therapy, yes, I have a good therapist, and yes, we have good rapport, and these things are essential. But I've also learned to be a good client, and I do think there's a whole conversation to have about psychotherapy and making it work again. Let's make psychotherapy great again. I'll get some caps done. Because it can be wonderful and it can be awful. It's the way it's done. But for the way I'm doing it, I would say, on the one hand, it feels like a superpower. And on the other, it's just brought me a tremendous amount of relief from tensions that I was not even conscious of that I was carrying. So that's why I proselytize. Like when people say to me, I have this problem, I'm like, go to therapy, see my therapist. He's got spaces, let's go. But if you're going to go, you got to promise me you're going to tell them the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but.
It's amazing to me how many people don't really understand how much we are governed by our unconscious emotions. I mean, I didn't realize that until I started going to therapy. I had an intuition about it. I knew that there were patterns in my life that kept looping over and over again. So I concluded there must be something going on inside me that I don't understand. But it's also very terrifying sometimes to confront, because what therapy is asking you to do, I think from my perspective, but I'd like to hear yours, is go back to the past and confront the most painful memories that you have, because it's in the confrontation of them that you can begin to understand how you got shaped and molded by them. What brought you to therapy initially? What was the presenting problem for you?
Oh God. Well, there's...
Or what's going on right now, whatever feels alive for you.
Well, the first thing that took me to therapy was I, like many clients, had misdiagnosed myself, which is standard. The brain, I think, largely speaking, the human brain has evolved to map external territory. It's not evolved to map internal territory. So we all need help seeing ourselves. So I went to therapy because I thought I was a sex addict. And the reason I thought I was a sex addict was because I kept getting back into an abusive relationship that I knew was abusive. And my mind and my body was telling me it's because I couldn't let go of the sexual connection that I had with this woman at the time. Through therapy, I found that that was not the case. That wasn't. There was a sexual addiction and there was a sexual fixation, but that was the tip of a very large iceberg. And it had far more to do with my own attachment issues and my own trauma from my childhood experiences. And unpacking that, I didn't stick with therapy. I wasn't consistent with it. So then I would drift away from therapy, get back into the meat grinder, get really hurt, come back to therapy, find out a little bit more, go back into meat grinder and come back out, looking for more therapy again because of the pain I was in. And I mean, if you ask me now what I'm in therapy for, I would say I'm looking to unpack the unconscious script that I've inherited from my parents, from my family, from my schooling, from my culture, from my childhood.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about that unconscious script? Like what happened to you and what were the conclusions that you drew and how did that make you up?
And this will bring us back to this point that we need to come back to as the inception of Spartan Life Coach and conservative males. My childhood experiences entrained me into a servile, slavish mindset where I only felt comfortable if I was serving the needs of a tyrannical partner. At first blush, you would think, oh, that's a wound from your mother then. Your mother would have been very dominating, abusive, demanding, hysterical, psychotic. Yes, but also the partners I was selecting were an amalgamation and reflected the abuse of both my mother and my father and the things that happened to me in environments associated with my family. So I had... there was physical abuse in my childhood. There was sexual abuse. There was psychological abuse, a lot of shaming and guilting and humiliating. I spent a lot of my time in fear and feeling like I didn't have the right to exist, feeling like I was a burden on the people around me. And then, of course, into adulthood. You get into the arena of adulthood and you're trying to be a man. I went to university, as I said, and then I had the inculcation and indoctrination of woke culture. At university, I was convinced by people that the world's evils were created by long dead white colonizers and that phallocentrism had destroyed the world. And so I dyed my hair purple and pierced my face.
You did not?
I did.
Really?
I really did.
Wow.
I've got to dig out, I've got one picture and I know it's somewhere in the attic. I'll dig it out one day and post it.
Where did you go to school?
We moved house a lot. So I changed schools on average every 9 months. But I went to, so I was raised half in the UK and half in Portugal. In the 5 years I was there, I went to 4 different schools. The last private school I went to, for the old heads who remember the Algarve in the 1980s, there was a school called Val de Lobo, which means the Valley of the Wolf. And that school was knocked down during the summer because they're expanding the golf course. So my parents were like, what are we going to do with this kid? So they sent me to boarding school. So I went to boarding school in the UK in Somerset at a place called Queen's. And then I moved from there again to the northwest of England to Birkenhead Boys' School. So it was a strange mix, my childhood. There was privilege as well. I am private school educated, and these were good schools. And these were largely very good experiences for me as well.
Right. How did you survive that childhood? I mean, I assume you're a well-spoken guy, intelligent guy, charming guy, good-looking guy, and physical guy. That must have gave you some sort of something for your ego to attach to and identify with.
It's very kind of you to say that, and I would like my unconscious to listen to you now. So,
you don't believe that about yourself.
It's one of the problems we have it's one of the things that needs unpacking in therapy. As many victims of childhood sexual abuse and physical abuse experience, I find my essential nature repellent. I think I'm a sort of a golem.
I understand.
And that I can infect people with whatever is wrong with me. It's not as bad now, but I used to have a problem when I would lie in bed with a girl at night and you'd fall asleep and I wouldn't want to touch them whilst I was sleeping. And my unconscious thought was, if whilst I'm sleeping I can't control the evil that's in me, and if my arm is on her or I'm hugging her, it will infect her, it'll get into her in my sleep. So I'm pretty messed up.
That's incredible. Wow. How? I mean, it makes sense to me. You have no choice but to internalize the abuse that is coming at you. What other sense could you make of it other than there must be something wrong with me? I must be bad, and then we become identified with it, and then we want to act it out in some way. And yet you have these other drives and needs for love and for connection.
Yes.
And they there's a bind that gets created that obviously must have created a lot of tension and fear.
Yes.
But also it must have created a lot of confusion for those around you, because you do present as a together, intelligent person. So I would imagine...
People keep telling me that, and I keep going, are you talking about me? A girl said to me recently, I find you intimidating. I was like, why? Because you have your shit together. I'm like, my life is chaos. It's chaos.
And yet it's funny, but you've managed to create a really interesting career for yourself, and you're out there.
Yes.
I mean, at what point did you make the decision? Because that's a bold decision, especially if that's what's rolling around in your unconscious, this place of self-loathing, and to put yourself out there onto YouTube and social media.
Yeah.
Where you're prolific.
So if you go, let's go deeper into my trauma.
Let's do it.
So I was parentified at a young age by both my parents into playing the role of mini psychotherapist and mini philosopher. So I was unseen unless I was being instrumentalized in some way. So in many ways, the project that has ended up manifesting is a direct manifestation of childhood trauma. I largely speak to women who are very, very bitter and resentful and hurt between the ages of 30 and 50 because they've been trapped or are trapped inside of a relationship with a narcissistic, psychopathic philanderer.
Yeah.
That was me talking to my mother at the kitchen table in Portugal when I was 9 years old. And it's still ongoing. I'm still doing it. The performance side of things, and being out there and putting myself out there, at this point in therapy, we're not even entirely sure it's not a form of self-harm, because I actually find it quite painful. And partly because the nature of the sexual abuse and the grooming that I experienced, because it was family, it was friends of family, and in a separate incident, it was in boarding school. It was always performance related. So the kind of sexual abuse was at times, let's say, voyeuristic, without being too graphic. So I was being watched and being compelled to do things that I didn't want to do. And so that also is linked in with childhood trauma.
Yeah. How does that impact your view of the world? Because obviously there's a lot going on in the world right now, a lot of shadow that's emerging, and you know, you had a traumatic childhood. How does that? What do you make of everything that's going on in the world? How does that shape your perspective?
I see the moment that we're going through as a slow motion apocalypse. Apocalypse, the Greek word, just means revelation. It's just the drawing back of the curtain. We've been in a period of repression, and now we're going to see what lies behind the curtain. Now we're going to see the truth of people. Beyond all their virtue signaling, their posturing, and the symbolic gestures and the bullshit, we're going to see the real darkness of their animal nature. I believe that's what we're going to see in the next decade.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I remember a video that you made maybe 5 years ago. I don't know why I remember it so vividly. You were outside, you were wearing a tank top, and you announced to your audience, I think it was a live on YouTube, that you were going to change course, that there was going to be a shift, and perhaps some people weren't going to like it and judge you for it. And I was immediately interested because I was curious, is he going to start to talk about things that are going on in the culture that I saw, that I wanted to talk about, and I started to, but it was taboo to talk about it because the force that was repressing it was so strong. And then over the next year, you made some very profound videos about, you know, Marxism and communism and the woke culture. And that must have taken a lot of courage for you, because I'm sure a lot of your audience was not on board with that. Or were they?
No, they really... No, so I can say something nice and somewhat optimistic. If you go back to 2015, which is not that long ago, had you said half of what I was saying in that time period to my audience in a seminar, most of them would have got up and left. If you say it now, most people will agree. And I have a largely female audience, and they will sit and they'll nod, because I think all of us, including myself, saw a way that we thought reality should go and where we thought goodness was, and we were wrong. And now we've seen that we were wrong, and we've been shown again and again and again, human nature doesn't work like that. And that's okay. It's okay. But there are different solutions we require to the problems that we face as a species.
You made that decision to confront that. Why? Was it just your conscience, or you were interested in that? You felt like something needed to be said?
It was what was in me then. It's what's in me now. I've just spent a year living in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and I made the decision to leave after spending a lot of money getting my business set up there, because you can't talk about these things there. In the UAE, theoretically, I don't think it would be applied, but by law, if I criticize the United Kingdom, my own country, I can potentially face 7 years in prison if I do it publicly.
Really?
Yes, in the UAE, if you wanted to walk the streets with a Palestinian flag and say, "Free Palestine, free your Muslim brothers and sisters," they would put you in prison.
What do you make of that?
I think it's insane. And I can't live.
It is insane.
I can't live in a country that operates on those coordinates. I don't mind living inside of a non-democratic, totalitarian theocracy. I can do that. As a guest. I'll follow their rules. I don't have a problem with living inside of a theocracy. I really don't. But that is too much for me. That's hypocrisy.
Is the diagnosis of what's going on in the culture what you often talk about? Is it a kind of narcissism? I mean, what I see is just borderline personality all over the place, and there's a mania to it, and there's an unconscious rage motivated by a deep terror, but that energy thinks it needs to kill to keep itself safe, and it feels like that's what's playing out. Like, I remember talking to somebody at a party, and we got into this charged discussion about what was going on. He was a university professor, so obviously he had a different point of view on what was going on because he had been very indoctrinated. And this was a number of years ago. And as the conversation got heated, he said, "Why are you so upset about this?" And I just blurted out, "Because these people want to kill me." And I'd never had that conscious thought. And But as soon as I said it, I knew that it was true. And he knew that it was true because it stopped him. And there is an energy there that wants to kill.
I couldn't have said what you just said better myself. The only thing I would add, not change, is you said it was driven by terror. I think it's equally driven by resentment.
Right. Go ahead.
There is tremendous envy and jealousy at play here.
What's your diagnosis of it? Is there? I mean, these are patterns in history, and I guess on some level, this is human nature, and maybe you could say that this is part of the evolutionary process. And
yes,
it's certainly bringing me closer to God, and I'm finding a strength that I never knew I had because of this force that is growing. But what do you have a sense? I know it's a big question, but why? Why? What is going on?
I'm reading Gurdjieff at the moment, and I read 80% of his stupid book and was ready to throw it away. I was like, this guy's a fucking con artist. What a charlatan. And then I got to a chapter and I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. And he speaks, Gurdjieff had this thing that he's a bit like Nietzsche. He likes to troll the reader. And so he wants to test your ability to get to the good stuff by making you wade through nonsense, sophistry, utter gibberish. That people who are, midwits think is wonderful and clever. And what he wrote, and that I agree with, is this is a part of human evolution. There's an inevitability to all of this. And it is actually a byproduct of progress if you zoom out. So this is a manifestation of the effects of industrialization and a particular brand of consumerist capitalism that we fell in love with. We are not starving on the savannas eating whatever the hyenas didn't finish, or whatever the hyenas left behind, with a child mortality rate of 80% anymore. We live in cities of perpetual light, where the only decisions you have to make is, what do you want on your burrito today? What color car would you like to drive? We are not a good evolutionary match for the environment that we ourselves have created, to bastardize a quote by Eric Weinstein. So we're not a good evolutionary match for this environment. We're not ready for these gifts. We're not ready for the material options that we have. And in this environment, we empower people who shouldn't have power. We've broken nature, we've broken evolution, and that's part of our evolutionary process, and it's okay, it's necessary. But where we're living in a period where we've broken the evolutionary process, where people who do not deserve power, they do not merit power. We should not listen to them. They've never done anything, they've never fought anything, they've never built anything, they've never worked for anything. They now have power. So we have Nietzsche's and Dostoevsky's nightmare, where the weakest, most bitter, and most resentful amongst us in this moment hold the most power.
Right.
That's how I would frame it, largely, roughly.
Yeah, Tate said something. This is the first time in history that the nerds have power.
He said it. He always says things in a way that's a little bit snappier than I can manage.
Right. But I was like, you know what? He's right.
Yeah, he's right.
He's right. Yeah. Do you like talking about this stuff, or do you get bored of it? Do you find it useful? Because I know for me and my lady, we can get wrapped up in talking about it forever, and sometimes we have to put a stop to it because it is so fascinating and it is so alive in the culture right now. So it's almost like you have to talk about it. At the same time, it's very easy to get caught up in all of it, and I feel like sometimes I loop in these conversations and forget about just the beauty of the world and going outside and love and softness and tenderness and art, which I actually think is part of the unconscious subversive nature of this evil force. They want to pull you away from beauty.
Yes.
But are you getting tired of talking about it?
No, I'll never get tired of talking about this. This is, if I have a life mission, this is the one.
This is it.
This is it. This is the Gospel of Thomas, the Gnostic Gospel. The quote by Jesus: "If what is within you is brought forth from you, what is within you will save you. If what is within you is not brought forth from you, what is within you will destroy you." That's how I feel about this stuff.
So it's your, I don't want to say it's not even your moral obligation, but it will save you to bring forth what is inside you.
It's the only chance I've got.
It's the only chance you've got. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that, and I live by the same philosophy. Although it's hard sometimes because you're going to get attacked. Do you get attacked?
All the time.
All the time. How is that? How is that to be demonized?
Well, this year it's going to get a lot worse because I have new projects coming out where I'll be speaking about this kind of thing more stridently. So I have to, again, this is discussed in therapy. If I have to do therapy twice a week, not once a week, I can afford it. You have to have a philosophy for this stuff. I actually had a good bit of, if you ever get attacked, I had a good thought about this the other night. Can you name anybody of any significance in history that people didn't write bad things about or tell lies about?
Right.
You can't.
Yeah.
Is it easy to lie about people? Yes, especially nowadays. Any fat slob with a thumb that works with access to a device can just go on Quora, go on Reddit, go on a YouTube comment and write lies. Yeah. It's easy to do. It's nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah. It does. And I've struggled with it. I think because, and I don't know if you relate to this, but my childhood wounding, I had a narcissistic mother, absent father. And so my mother made me her man, and I took care of her needs, but I wasn't seen and I wasn't understood. And anything that I did that upset her, obviously that part of me I made bad and shameful. So when I come out and I get attacked, it touches into this place inside me where my goodness isn't seen. And and then I can feel that impulse to become defended. And I know that when I'm defending, I'm getting myself into trouble. But it's painful. It's hurtful for me to receive the attacks. But as I've become more outspoken, I feel like I've gotten stronger in it. And exactly what you're saying, there's nobody who's done anything great throughout history has not been attacked. I mean, Jesus, they crucified him. Mm-hmm. And, Abraham Lincoln, it was the same when you read about what his opponents were saying to him. So it takes a lot of courage to come out that way. What's your family think of you and all the work that you're doing?
My relationship with my family now is good because I care about them and I invest time and attention in them. I care about them more now. I value them more now than I ever have at any point in my life. So, yeah, they think I'm eccentric. They think I'm weird, and they're right. I am eccentric. I am weird. But I think that they know I'm of good intent. My family knows I'm of good intent.
Was there a period of time where you created some separation between them because of all the things that happened in your childhood?
Yes.
How was that?
Well, I was very confused. And
were you angry?
Oh, I'm furious. Yeah.
How did your anger express itself? What did you do with all that anger?
I took up a job as a nightclub bouncer, threw away my degree and punched the fuck out of people whenever I could.
Wow. Yeah. Was there any other ways you suppressed it? Were you drinking or any kind of addiction?
Cocaine. I would combine that lifestyle with drinking and cocaine. They tend to all go hand in hand.
Right.
So yeah, and at that time I wasn't homeless, but I lived on couches, I lived in attics, I lived in a caravan, I lived in a garage, I would do nightclub security, I would drink, I would snort coke, and I would fight. And that was my life for a while.
And when did you wake up to something, that there was something going on, and make the connection between what was happening?
Oh, I was slapped by the Almighty. Eventually, everybody knows this, it's a trope. The longer you spend in that life, the closer you get to death or prison. And eventually there was an incident where I really did serious damage to a couple of people. And I realized I wasn't a gangster. I wasn't a tough guy. I was very scared of getting shot, and I was very scared of repercussions coming back on my family. I spent about a week when we were sorting this out. I eventually paid my way out of it. But it was very, very hard. I didn't sleep very much during that 7-day period, but I prayed a lot. And I prayed for a second chance. And then I didn't do nightclub security anymore, and I needed money. So I worked as a taxi driver for a year around Birkenhead, which is where I'm from. It's like a low-income area in the northwest of England. You could think maybe Detroit or some of the rougher areas of Boston for points of reference. And a friend of mine gave me the chance to, well, a friend of mine, he's an eccentric weirdo as well. He's from here, but he's lived in Buddhist monasteries in his life, and I would go and do chanting and meditation with him. And one day he said to me, "Do you want to work in schools with kids?" And I said, "No, I fucking don't. That's the last thing I want to do." And he convinced me to try it. And we would go into schools and do like a 5-hour seminar, motivational talk, get them to, become more emotionally intelligent, better with their communication, handle their emotions better, and set some goals. And I found I was good at it. And I spent about 5 years doing that. So I was very lucky. I was thrown out of that life, given a good scare, and then given the opportunity to actually contribute and do something useful for a change.
You said that you prayed. Are you somebody who's always prayed, or did you grow up with God? Did you come to God? And what is your relationship now with God?
Oh, good Lord. So
I love talking about God. It's funny, like at this point in my life, I know I was getting older, it's like, it's all I want to talk about. It's so interesting to me.
So let me try. I'll try and answer the questions without rambling on too much. I was raised Christian, was raised in Christian schools. Like Boston, the Liverpool area is full of Irish immigrants. And you have a lot of not very good Catholics around here. And I didn't think much of it because I didn't see people following the rules. So I turned to mysticism, magic, Sufism, Buddhism, Taoism, tarot cards by the time I was 8 or 9 years old.
Interesting.
As a coping strategy. So I was a little hippie. I think I first took acid when I was 13. And I did that because I was reading William Burroughs, Terence McKenna, Robert Anton Wilson, guys like that. And I'd sort of convinced myself through my misunderstanding of Zen Buddhism and my misunderstanding of what those guys were writing, that if I kept taking psychedelics, I could force myself to become enlightened and all of my suffering would end. Every time I took acid, it was a bad trip because I was traumatized and had PTSD, but didn't know it. But I would fixate on the nature of God in every one of these bad trips. Fast forward to age 45, I don't believe in an external supreme being who watches over us and punishes us and rewards us like a sort of a grumpy old Jewish granddaddy, warlord granddaddy. But I see, so my concept of God would be pantheistic. God is everything or God is nothing. God is not divisible. If there is a God, God is all powerful, and God is indivisible from itself. So in that way, it's a little bit like some schools of Islamic philosophy or Sufi philosophy, where everything that exists at the will of God, and we all submit to the will of God through existence. But it's almost like a quantum physics self-looping statement.
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, it's great. So evil exists in relationship to God. Like it exists because of God in some way. Is that how you think about it, or is evil a separation from God, or is it both? I've tried. I can't stretch to this logical fallacy that God is all powerful and yet there is Shaitan that opposes him. I say Shaitan, I say Satan sometimes when I'm talking to be semi-ironic. But no, there's God. And
our concept of good and evil, if you've had psychedelic experiences or if you've meditated, or as I'm sure you have, our sense of good and evil can shift dependent on the context of the consciousness that we're viewing reality itself.
Right.
Good and evil may be very, very subjective terms.
Yeah, I was really, my conception came from a vision quest that I did a number of years ago, and I was just beginning to develop a relationship with God. I grew up going to Catholic school and learning all of that, but it never really took. And then once I went to university, I kind of abandoned all that. I guess became an atheist, and but as I got older, and especially as I went through the therapeutic training program that I went through, the psychology of it was fascinating to me, and it's a never-ending puzzle to solve. Psychology, somebody's mind, how their defense forms, and how do you help them get to the essence of their self, the truth of their self, and allow them to express who they actually are in an authentic way, and really create and love, and what are the barriers that are preventing them from doing that. And I hit a point where I could feel that there was something missing, that it was incomplete, and then I started in with the Lakota people and started doing a lot of work with the Native Americans, and went on a vision quest. And the message that I received on the fourth day, I mean, there's no food or water, so you're broken down, was there's no separation between the light and the dark. It's one thing. That nature has no judgments or preferences, and God is not concerned with your suffering. And I wasn't entirely sure what that meant. Like, what do you mean God doesn't care about my suffering? But the way I interpret it is everything just is. It's just an isness to things. And if we accept that isness and relax into it, like the Rumi quote, there is a field beyond right and wrong. I will meet you there. And from that place, we actually that's our free will. That we're not in reaction to something. There's actually not, I prefer this over this. It's like when we're in acceptance of everything that's happening, we actually can make real conscious choices. So I don't know what the question is. I mean, that's just kind of explaining my conception of God, and
well,
is that how you?
No, it's very interesting to hear you talk on it. When we talk to be heard, and so you're producing content with your words, and essentially we create dogma. You can't say anything that isn't dogmatic. So everything you just said is dogmatic, and everything I just said is dogmatic.
Interesting.
And when you're on your fourth day with the Lakota on the vision quest, there was no dogma. There was what is.
Yes.
Because the lack of water and the lack of food and the lack of proper sleep, it breaks your ego down. All of your ego boundaries, all of your sense of self. David disappears in that space. Richard disappears in that space. And then you're merging with what is. There is some of this kind of philosophy even in the Judeo-Christian tradition. I think it's just buried. I think the line, I am that I am, it is so similar to it is that it is. I think when you look at the old Jewish stories, sometimes like Adam and Eve, every time in scripture when it says, and God said, is that poetic code for, and it was so? So and God says, my finger is up, that means it is so that my finger, it doesn't, but we, through our filters, through our epistemes, from the cultural period that we live in, we're seeing it through a different way. And we're like, no, it means that there is a God, an Abrahamic God, the ancient Jewish granddaddy, and he's looking and he's saying, no, I don't think they were that stupid. I don't think they were so unsophisticated in that time. I think they were also having mystical experiences. They were also going and fasting and living their religion.
Yes.
Not watching TV, buying food in the supermarket, going to church, taking the sacraments, and then going back to having an affair or doing whatever they're doing with their lives. The people that we're talking about were living it because there's nothing else to do. And so their words, we can't really assign proper meaning to their words anymore. We can't access what they meant truly, or it's difficult to.
It's very difficult to. And it makes me think about the therapeutic experience and the nature of healing in general. And what happened for me is, I was in talk therapy and I loved it. And I understood what was happening, but I ended up pursuing a more somatic approach because I wanted to feel.
Yeah.
I wanted to experience my rage and my grief and my sorrow and my fear in an embodied way, it present and witnessed, and so that's become essentially my philosophy of healing and the work that I do here in my studio. And I guess I'm wondering for you, how do you think about healing? Like you're spending a lot of time and energy, effort, working on healing yourself, and you're also helping others heal. Mm-hmm. How do you think about that for yourself? Do you have a philosophy or?
Roughly, I would say that when healing happens, we have nothing to do with it. It happens. If I get a cut on my hand, it heals. I didn't heal it. It healed itself. As above, so below, as within, so without. Your body is just like your mind. The last psychedelic experience I had was ayahuasca. And that was the message I was given over and over again, is stop dividing between body and mind. You are one being. You're one self. My hand heals itself, and so my heart heals itself. So then the work that we're doing sometimes is to try to get out of the way of the natural healing process and stop picking at the fucking wounds.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of what I do. It's a lot of what my clients do. It's a lot of what human beings do. They go back and they're pulling at it. It's trying to heal and they're pulling it apart.
Well, that is the trap, I think, of therapy, and why so many people are critical of it, because, and I find it with myself and with my clients, it's very easy for me to get lost in the story, get lost in the conversation, and talk about the complexity of it and break it down. And this happened because of this, and solving those puzzles can be fascinating, but often it's a way to avoid dealing with doing the deep work. And so, and sometimes I feel the place where I'm in collusion with my clients. Like that's something I have to be very aware of. Like I don't want to, maybe there's somewhere that I don't want to go. I don't want to deal with that shit inside me, and so I don't want to bring it up. And is that something that you think about, talk about, and also therapy, ayahuasca, psychedelics? What else has been crucial in your healing journey?
I think simplifying everything has been crucial. So you said, where we get to the point where we don't want to do the deep work, and even the deep work is not really something that we do. The deep work is one thing. It's grieving, and we don't really do anything. We are just sad. We just cry. We're just present. Yeah. We're just present with our anger. We go to a place where we feel safe enough. We take off all of our masks, all of our armor, all of our layers, all of our ego identity, and say, there is a part of me that is wounded and it's hurt. And then you sit with it, and it's very, very sad. And then you cry and you grieve. And there isn't really, what else are you going to do?
Well, and let's get back to the conservative men, because I can hear their voices responding to what you just said, saying, dude, just fucking, deal with it, get to work, make some fucking money, don't sit in your pain, who gives a fuck, the past is the past, get on with it. Mm-hmm. How do you How do we convince these guys that they could use
They don't need convincing. They just need a hug. They'll be fine. Did you see Sean Strickland with Theo Von crying recently in an interview?
No.
You should look that up. It's a beautiful moment. He's talking about, he's an MMA fighter, as everybody knows, and he's talking about his experience of being abused by his stepfather and how my interpretation of what he was saying, that how impotent and helpless and sad he felt as a child, and how angry he is and sad about that as an adult. And it was a beautiful moment of masculine vulnerability that was then held beautifully by Theo Von, who said, it's okay, we can just sit. You don't have to talk, we can just sit. And it's in a podcast interview like this. They both stopped performing for a moment and they were just being authentic.
That was recently?
6 days ago, maybe it came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I didn't.
Yeah, you'd like it.
I didn't see that. That feels very significant.
Yeah. For us, it is.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
Well, just to see those guys. I mean, I guess that's been my I don't know, it's my goal, but on some level, my mission has been to reach those guys. As I said earlier, I in my training program, it was dominated by women.
Yeah.
Most of the men who were there were gay.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing program, and I got a lot out of it. And the woman who ran the program was a genius, a master. But something was missed, obviously.
Yeah.
And they didn't really understand men. And I felt this deep longing. Obviously because my father wasn't around, but so I longed for it in the school and for that kind of support and love. But I really understood how misunderstood men are by women. And we know that most therapists are women. We know there inherently is some kind of bias. So that's why I'm so interested in you and feel a connection with you. And it's great to hear that something is happening in the culture where you can have an MMA fighter with Theo Von, who's also shown himself many times being vulnerable, to cry and sit in it. That feels like a zeitgeist moment almost to me. Do you sense that something is changing?
We're ready for change. We're ready. There's been this tension in the air, like a storm building, and people are ready for rain. So yeah, we're all ready for change. We're all ready for change. And then across the field of human consciousness, you'll get these little blips and spurts where one person goes first, where obviously a guy like Sean Strickland or a guy like Theo Von, the courage to put themselves out there consistently, to do all the work that they've done, to be able to do the exceptional things that they can do. One is a stand-up comic, which I think is a very masculine endeavor. And the other is an MMA fighter, which obviously everybody understands is a masculine endeavor. Let's get into the problems of psychotherapy, and let's start with Spartan life coach and conservative men. So in my 20s, I wasn't just working as a bouncer and a taxi driver. I also worked for the probation service for a period, working with criminals who were criminals because they were drug addicts. I worked with social workers, and oddly enough, they weren't coming to me for counseling or therapy, which I wasn't qualified in, but for hypnotherapy. Somewhere around the age of 25, I wanted my own online business, so I started teaching self-defense and selling DVDs, self-defense DVDs. I was doing that whilst doing door work, and part of that period when I was working in the schools, I was still teaching self-defense. The self-defense thing was called streetfightsecrets.com. It had a YouTube channel. And because I was blending elements of psychology, neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis, plus what is called in that area combatives. So guys who want to just learn how to fight because they're military, law enforcement, or security personnel. They don't want a syllabus. They just want to either restrain a guy unarmed or beat the fuck out of the guy unarmed in front of them. MMA is on the rise, but it's still, at that time, it's still kind of goofy MMA where you'd have like a karate guy versus a boxer. They weren't, It was coming into, at the beginning of that, nobody called it MMA. It was just called cage fighting. MMA became its own thing. Okay, so that's all peaking. And I think because MMA was taking off, there was a resurgence of interest in martial arts. And I became successful in that small niche of preparing guys for real world violence psychologically. I was teaching like how to elbow, how to headbutt, whatever, but they were really coming to me for the psychological preparation, which I now realize I was training people out of, in between trauma responses. I was training them out of a freeze, flight response into a fawn fight response, and then anchoring the fight response. My biggest market was America. And it got to the point where I was working with multiple law enforcement agencies in consultation, and even the air marshals were in regular communication with me monthly. The chief instructor in Las Vegas for the US Air Marshals, it's nearer to 9/11, obviously. It's like 2005, 2006, we were in regular contact. So I then ended up with a list of ex-doormen, serving in ex-military, LEOs, security guys, who were like, oh, I love your programs. You know, it's really good. We love the training. We love the psychology. We love what you're teaching. It's great. Dude, I have problems with my wife. She won't listen to me, man. My kids don't respect me. I can go on ops and I can shoot a guy in the head and then go home and sleep. But if somebody cuts in line at me at Target, I sweat. I'm anxious.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. You know, if you're law enforcement or you're military, you obey the rules. You are going to rise up the ranks by your capacity to listen to orders and respect the hierarchy, which is fine when it's monitored and governed by other men like you. Who are operating by the same values. When it's not,
right.
When it's not, there's an abuse of power, and then we have military police and military courts. Okay, it's not perfect. I'm not saying that. So guys were coming to me and saying, I really need help with asserting myself. So I'm hard as fuck, and I can fight 10 bastards, but I can't say no to my wife, and it's really humiliating. It's really embarrassing. So I said, okay, why don't you see a therapist? Why are you coming to me? I don't want to see a shrink. I'm not speaking to a shrink. Those weird head shrinkers. Ugh. No, I'll talk to you. I'm like, dude, I'm like half a drunk cokehead and you want to tell me? I'll try. And we would do consultations for like $40. You know, we would just have a chat over Skype, as it was back then. That grew and grew and grew because they would then go and tell their friends. So I was doing these informal chats, mostly with men. There was a few women who came through, mostly with men. Now, they hated therapy and they hated head shrinkers. So I created like a psychology training program, and it was called Spartan Life Coach. So it's not therapy, it's life coaching. And it's Spartan because the 300 came out 4 years before.
Yep.
Everybody's doing kettlebells and CrossFit workouts called the Spartan. So it was a la mode. That's why it was called the Spartan Life Coach. It was for them. It was for the men. It was all red and white. It was all military style, and it was no fluff. And it was just to teach you how to assert your boundaries in a civilian context, not in a military context.
And it was successful, and there was demand for it, and these guys got a lot out of it.
Yes.
And so it's really just about how you package it and how you talk to them. And I'm sure because of your history and how you show up as a masculine man, they're much more willing to trust you.
That then morphed into looking at all forms of predatory behavior through personality disorders like narcissism and psychopathy. And then the project kind of moved more and more into narcissism and psychopathy because that's where the market wanted me to go.
Right.
So what I wanted to do isn't what I ended up doing. It isn't, so I ended up speaking way more about narcissism, CPTSD, and childhood trauma. And I went down that whole rabbit hole for about 8 years before I popped my head up and went, hang on a second, is this what I want to be doing?
Yeah.
The psychotherapist I work with now is the fourth psychotherapist I worked with in the last 5 years. And why I dropped other psychotherapists is because psychotherapy is poisoned with ideology. Yeah. It's not pure psychotherapy. I'll give you my criticisms of psychotherapy.
Please.
Thank you, Dr. Freud, for all that you have given us, and Jung and Alfred Adler, but I don't think that we're engaged in anything like a medical or scientific endeavor here. And I think we should be honest about that. I think we should go back to saying this is a philosophical endeavor. Let's leave science and medicine to the neurobiologists and the endocrinologists. So for me personally, I would advocate for a split where we go back. I think it's more honest to say this is a philosophical endeavor. It is very useful. We have scientific data that backs that it is useful under certain contexts, but it's really, it's philosophical. It's the Socratic method. It's a dialogue. You're dialoguing. There's two adults in a room having a consensual dialogue, moving towards a joint objective. Many of our problems are due to childhood trauma, but not all of them.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
Say, for example, I keep going, not me. There's a guy called Fred, a client of mine. He's definitely not me. He keeps going back to a girlfriend of his who is sexually incontinent, very unfaithful, gets off on betrayal. The sex with her is intense. He's getting some sort of masochistic reward for the betrayal because of his mother, his father, blah, blah, and so on. Fred goes to a psychotherapist and says, wow, she's narcissistically abusive. Yes. You're trauma bonded to her. True. You're doing this because your childhood scripts demand that you do this. So we stay inside the psychotherapy bubble, and everything I said, you're a psychotherapist. It's reasonable, right?
Yeah.
It's fine. Does Fred have other options, sexually speaking? Does Fred have other options, romantically speaking? No, because Fred, his self-confidence is completely destroyed and gutted from the inside out. And he hates himself because of the humiliation of getting back with a girl who is psychologically, verbally, and emotionally abusive just because the orgasms are good. Every time he does that, it goes down. Psychotherapy comes from Nietzsche. Freud, Adler, and Jung were huge Nietzsche fanboys, but we didn't get enough Nietzsche. Nietzsche proclaimed himself the world's first psychologist. What we didn't get was enough of a discussion about power. Why did Fred stay there? And the psychotherapy answer is because his childhood determines he must. I would say, and also he didn't have choices. If Fred had other choices, he would have taken them, but that's a power issue, not a trauma issue.
Can you explain that? Can you unpack that a little bit? I want to make sure I understand.
In the psychotherapy room, why are we not asking what the human being, be they male or female, in front of us is capable of doing and not capable of doing? And why aren't we saying, look, you need to be stronger? I don't mean in lifting weights. I mean potent. You need more potency. Fred, you're a bit of a fucking loser, mate. You're stuck. You're not high status. You're not attractive to the kind of women you want to be attractive to. You don't have choice. It's not solely that you're driven by this mystical psychic force of, your mummy slapped you around, so you just want to relive that again and again. That's the psychotherapy ideology. It's also that you don't have choice, because I just posit a question philosophically, and maybe I'm wrong. These are new ideas. If Fred had the choice of getting with another girl who would supply the needs that he had, would he have taken? So there's girl A who's abusive, and then there's another girl who's just as attractive but not abusive. Let's call her girl B. If girl B was available in this hypothetical situation, would Fred have insisted on girl A because of his childhood trauma? I'm open to your opinion.
Well, I guess the question is, when you say that Fred didn't have a choice, is it that he didn't have a choice, or is that he believes that he doesn't have a choice? And that's the distortion. That's the belief that he has to take what he can get.
Right. But in this situation, I'm saying let's posit for the ridiculous thought experiment that I've made up. He does have a choice. Goal B is right there. She's texting him. She's calling him. She's good to go. Is he still going to choose goal A?
A is the abusive one. Probably. There's probably a compulsion there.
That's the psychotherapeutic answer, and I say no.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think in some cases maybe, but the ideological trap is we've overemphasized the power of unconscious forces and underemphasizes the power of conscious external reality.
I understand. Although I think that's absolutely true. And I love what you're saying about power. And I think one of the things that psychotherapy doesn't want to look at is the primitive nature of man, right? We don't want to talk about high status and hypergamy and these evolutionary primal forces that are driving us. We want to turn everything into the unconscious. I mean, but I guess from my experience, and maybe this is my own bias, it's interesting that you're bringing this up because this came up with a therapist at a workshop just last weekend where he said the words, not everything is about the unconscious. And it stayed with me, and I wasn't sure what to make of that, but I'm always aware that I have biases. How can I not? Right? And what am I not seeing, and what am I not understanding about myself? But and let me just say one more thing, and then you can say what you think. But I think the reason that men don't want to go to therapy, in part, is because it's not actionable. If the therapist is not implementing some kind of place where they feel a sense of control and power, right, and they're challenged in a particular kind of way, that they're not going to respond to it, because otherwise you're asking them to delve into what would be the more feminine realms, which is the beingness of things, and have you just feel your emotions and be with them, and that space I think is a very hard place for men to inhabit, and they have a lot of judgment about what that means. So I don't know if that's a response to your question.
I have a question. I know you're interviewing me, but I have a question. You said, and I agree with your statement, in psychotherapy, we don't want to look at power. We don't want to look at status. We don't want to look at potency. Why?
I think because it's scary to come to terms with the barbaric and primitive nature of human beings, and how driven we are by sexual selection. I think it's easier to attribute everything to the unconscious. That's my experience. When I bring this element in, this masculine imperative, into the work, the men like it. The women, not all the men, I shouldn't say that. Some men do, but the women, they want to pathologize it. Well, that's bad. And I'm like, well, it just is.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's the pathologizing it. If we go back to the woke, that's why we're here. People don't want to look at and face the true nature of man. And if you understand the true nature of man, you understand that you better put boundaries and regulations on things. Otherwise, this thing is going to spin out of control. You just can't let 8 million, whatever it is, illegal immigrants come into the country and not think that they're going to assert their dominance at some point. They're going to take their shot. And I don't say that from a cynical, racist point of view. It's like, that's what I would do. Yeah, that's human nature.
Sure.
That's just what it is. We're still very primitive. We're still, primates. Sure. And I think it's that's to me is the blind spot of therapy. And so when the right, who I think is more in touch with that, looks at people on the left pushing this ideology, pushing therapy, I think that they think that's all bullshit.
I think the other thing that has happened when we're talking politics, right and left, is the left has really embraced the psychologization of everything and the overuse of jargon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I asked you that question so that I could narcissistically offer myself the chance to engage in full-blown exposition.
Yeah.
When I answer that question for myself, I agree with what you've said. I'm gonna try and steelman the position a little bit.
Please.
So rather than saying male and female, because this is triggering language for me, I find it very triggering.
I know. I knew when I said it.
So I'm going to say yin and yang principles, so we can speak in more mystical, softer Jungian terms. So the yin is soft and yielding, and it is darkness, and it is receptive. Yang is light, and it is hard and thrusting, and it represents light. Darkness and light doesn't mean good and evil. We need dark. We need the cave. You like your bed. You like to sleep. That's yin. It's beautiful. We love it. Mm-hmm. When you have yin coordinates, yin is more the feminine principle. There is more of a emphasis on harmony, conformity, and fairness. I think of running a kindergarten. So there's a matriarchal sense of like, we mustn't let the children get out of control. That's when it's ill aspected. You end up with a smother mother. In the yang space, things can get bullying, extremely tyrannical, hierarchical, and the strong defeat the weak, and that's it. And you end up with negatively aspected yang. You have bullies and tyrants. We need balance. Yin and yang need the polarization operating together. When people think of the yin-yang symbol, I had a Taoist, a doctor of Taoism, teach me this. He said the yin-yang symbol is not still. When you imagine it as a rolling GIF. It's always moving. That's life. When it freezes, your body dies. The culture dies. The nation dies. So psychotherapy has been operating on yin principles for good reason, because Jung and Freud were wannabe archaeologists first. That was their first love, was archaeology. So they wanted to go into the past and down into the dark and decode the hieroglyphics of the ancient times in the crypts, which is what they do in psychoanalytic theory. You go into the past, into yin, and you decode, and then you come to the light and you say, look what we found. What revelation. How wonderful. Now you can live. And sometimes they're right, but not always. If you overemphasize fairness and conformity and harmony, you lose life. Things start to die. In the same way, if you overemphasize competition and hierarchy, things start to die. So what's happening, I would claim, in the psychotherapeutic space is we don't want to look at things like status and power, because some of us are not high status and powerful.
Exactly.
So everybody is not now allowed to eat steak because a baby can't chew it, to Masha Mark Twain quote. Nobody can eat steak just because babies can't chew steak. That's the fair thing to do.
Yeah.
And the more Nietzschean view would be to say this is absolute poison. It generates decadence. It generates what he called ressentiment, and leads us down instead of up. It takes us into the Untergang rather than the Übergang. We must have competition. We must have hierarchies. And life is that it is. When we are no longer leading our clients to truth, we're leading them to delusion, and we're leading them back to insanity.
That's what you see. No, that's great. That's it's really brilliantly said. And that's what you're seeing is the blind spot of psychotherapy. It's just that when you're not leading them to truth.
This is where Jordan Peterson at his best is really brilliant and represents a kind of an antidote to the slow self-suicide arsenic pill that culture has been feeding itself. Western culture, the Anglosphere, has been feeding itself for years. Which is to say something like, look, sometimes when you're depressed because you're low status, eh? You know, your life sucks, and that's why you're depressed. Yeah. Sort your fucking life out and you won't be depressed. Yeah. That's not always true before people go wild in the comments. There can be genetic reasons, there can be drug abuse reasons, there can be a lot of reasons for depression. But for many people, if not most, their life is going down the toilet. They know it. And the system, the body and the mind is saying, hey, dude, you need to do something about this because we're not going anywhere good.
Well, if they embrace that principle, which to me is self-evident, then their whole philosophy comes crumbling down. really. And so there's a lot of pushback on it, or it's really what it is. They're pathologized it. I feel like masculinity has been pathologized.
Tell me more about that.
Well,
what's the evidence for that? Sorry, I should have said.
For masculinity being pathologized?
Yes, I agree with you, but just for the sake of exposition.
Well, the most obvious one, I guess, is the American Psychological Association saying that traditional masculinity is harmful. And if, I haven't read it recently, but if you read through it, this hyper-competitive outlook that men have, they think that that's a distortion, a relic from the past, or the notion of patriarchy is somehow an oppressive force against women, and they refuse to look at any other argument around it. So, which tells me how ideological it is. And just from personal experience, like I feel it. I felt it in my school. I felt the judgment that came at me when I would bring out my aggression, and when I would assert authority in a certain kind of way, and they were afraid of it. And I think that's ultimately what it is. And I understand. You could ultimately bring this all back to men. Perhaps men, not perhaps, they certainly were tyrannical with their power. They didn't take responsibility for it.
Which men? Which men? When?
Well,
I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. Which men?
Yeah.
All men?
Well,
everywhere at all times?
Let's say Western men.
All Western men abuse their power over women.
Not all Western men abuse their power over women. I think some Western men have abused their power over women, and I think there's a distortion there. I mean, my feeling, what I think about it, is that the patriarchy is just what happened. It was an agreement so that we could survive. And maybe the dynamic became outdated and needed to be reinvented. But I know that in my own relationship, my relationship is very patriarchal. And both of us had a kind of struggle with that early on, because I had some shame about stepping into that role, even though I wanted to. And she had shame about surrendering to that. But now that we've negotiated it, we're both extraordinarily happy, and we feel the beautiful yin yang, the masculine feminine polarity, the harmony, and the equality that exists. That there is no real power structure dynamic fight, because we've relaxed into it. So I've had that embodied experience of it. And so when I look out in the world and I see all the conversation about the evils of the patriarchy or toxic masculinity and the push to have women make money and focus on their careers, I see a lot of distortion, and I see a lot of unhappiness, and I see a lot of pain, and I see a lot of what ultimately separation from nature and separation from God.
You mentioned men of the West being abusive. For you to know, because it adds color to the debate, I have friends in Muslim countries, Muslim women, who cannot tell their mothers and cannot tell their Muslim friends that all they want to do is be mothers and have children and marry a Muslim man.
Really?
Oh, yes. I love telling people this because everybody says the same thing. They go, really?
That's interesting.
Oh, feminism is going strong in the East. Oh, believe me.
Really?
United Arab Emirates, Malaysia, the Muslim communities in China and Thailand. Oh, yes. I had a goal. This is 2018. I've known her for 10 years. She cried in a shopping mall in front of me. And she said, she was 28 at the time. All I want to do is get married, have children, and stay at home and be a mother. She is a Muslim. Raised Muslim, Muslim country, Muslim family, not allowed. has to have a job, has to be a real estate agent, has to be a baddie, has to be a boss bitch. She lives in the city. She doesn't live in the kampong. If she lived in it, So that I should say that. And all of these women live in cities. But basically, if a place has Instagram and they know who the Kardashians are, they're as infected as everywhere else.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Really,
really
sad.
Yeah, sad.
So we hate mothers now. So feminism seems to have got to a place where they hate the essence of femininity itself. The greatest power a woman has is making life. For all the engines and trains and guns that we boys can make, we cannot make a single fucking human being. A woman can do that with no effort whatsoever. That's her greatest power. And that has become the ultimate sin. Thank you, feminism.
Yeah, it's dark. It's a dark, angry force in there. And yet, if I hold the line on this idea that the natural order is patriarchal, meaning men should lead, right? And that if men should lead, then everything that's happening in the culture is ultimately their responsibility. Right.
So, do you think all men should lead, or do you think some men should maybe just take a back seat? Maybe some men should just sit it out.
No, obviously. I mean, and let's say the masculine should lead. Obviously, I'm not.
So if you said,
I'm not rigid about it.
No, if you said instead the yang should lead, and it's a meritocracy, then whoever is for leadership, by nature is leading. And not all men are yang. Some men are not. You mentioned
you helped me stay out of trouble.
Well, I'm doing my best. In the psychotherapy field where we nurture, because what we do is very feminine. We hold space, we nurture, we encourage vulnerability. We're in the realm of emotions. So you do have men in that space who have no interest in leadership whatsoever.
Of course.
And then there are women who are very interested in leadership. I have no problem with women being in power. I really don't.
Of course not. No.
If they are the best human being for that job, give it to them.
Of course, and that's why we should have the workforce totally opened up, because we want the best people, and sometimes those best people will be women, and that's great. I mean, listen, I trust a female doctor more than a male doctor. I would prefer a woman.
Why?
But I would prefer a male pilot. I'm just saying, man. Just saying.
Why would you prefer a female doctor and a male pilot? I hear you, but I'm just wondering why.
Because I went to school with a bunch of guys who were, in medical school.
Yeah.
And they were psycho.
Right.
And I've met a lot of doctors. It's all mechanical to them.
Right.
And they don't see the person. And so I want a woman doctor because I want her to use her intuition, her feeling that she's actually seeing me, she's with me emotionally. Because if you're sick, that's a big component of it. I don't think you can actually separate the two things. I don't think the body or illness, I don't think it's a mechanical issue. The first thing that happens to me when I get sick or something happens is why? Yes. Why is this happening? Yes. I understand some things are random, but how the hell did I get myself into this situation? Why did I do that? If I had an accident, I must not have been present for that.
Yes.
And if I have an illness, I'm the first thing I consider is am I out of harmony with myself? Because I feel like if I'm living in harmony with myself, if I'm really in alignment, I'm probably not going to get sick.
So it's interesting. I'm lucky that I can afford private healthcare here in the UK, and I have 2 doctors for a medical condition I'm dealing with at the moment. And I chose 2 female doctors, but I never really gave it any thought. I've always had good experiences with female doctors, so I just do the same thing. To female pilots, I was flown inside the UK on a prop plane, a little plane.
Oh my God.
From a city to another city. It's a lawnmower with seats. It was just a shitty thing. As we walked out onto the runway, there was 2 girls who went and sat in the cockpit, both about 24, blonde and beautiful, really unusually attractive. And I was like, I don't like this.
No. I mean, it's fine if you want to have a porn fantasy, but I don't know if I actually want to Two hot pilots come in, you know, that sounds fun.
Was it Dave Chappelle who said it? He wanted like an old, sort of a 50-year-old white guy with Ray-Bans and freckles on his arms as the pilot. That's who you want in control of the plane. Yeah, so we have
fine.
We all
and that's who women want flying the plane, by the way.
Sure.
You know, sure. Of course. It's all good. Why what so I want to go back to the beginning where you said that it's hard for you to receive praise. Is that a fair way to characterize it? That there's some part of you that doesn't let in that you're smart, you're intelligent, you're charming, you're having an impact, like that conflicts with this place from your childhood. Is that? And I know that the British tend to have this false modesty and they make fun of themselves and, you know, they push everything away. But you have to know on some level, Richard, that you're a badass motherfucker.
So
right?
Another component to the story of how things came together when it transferred from Street Fight Secrets to Spartan Life Coach. I myself was not doing very well at that time. I was like personally quite depressed. And one of the things that kept me going was I listened to a lot of stand-up comedy, but a lot when I was working. So I was listening to Opie and Anthony, I was listening to Jim Norton, Patrice O'Neill was God, Richard Pryor, Bill Burr, Louis C.K. And I internalized them, I introjected them. And so I made a deal with myself that no matter what I did with the project that was coming, this was Spartan Life Coach didn't exist. Patrice O'Neill said, I want to say profound things, but I don't want to be profound about it. Sadly, he's passed away. There's always this voice in the back of my head that is just like, you don't ever want to get away from being able to take the piss out of yourself. And you don't ever want to get above yourself. So if I was sat in a room full of stand-up comics and I was going to get roasted, any pomposity that had crept into me would be an excellent avenue of attack. So I'm very, very careful of that. And I would just say, like, I'm proud of the work I've done. I've made a big effort to help people. I have helped people. And I think the work is good. And I'm happy with that. Like if I pass away tomorrow, I'd be like, I know I did something. I know it was good. But then it's the work that's good. This guy is, I don't know.
Why won't you let go of that? Why?
Well, because
why do you hold on?
Well, people are fallible. You know, they always say, don't meet your heroes. Let people just exist as heroes in your mind, as an avatar. Don't meet your heroes. Why is that a saying? Because when you meet the real person, they're fallible. Like, people are fallible.
You're afraid you're going to let people down? Like when they meet you, they're going to be disappointed? You're not as smart as they think you are, or charming?
The biggest compliment I get from people is that I'm exactly the same in real life as I am online. So I've been very careful to not like let this digression occur, but I'm very keen on people fixating on ideals and philosophy and virtue, and not to worry too much about people, because this is a weird kind of hero worship that we've developed with celebrities or low-level celebrities or high-level celebrities, whatever, people in the public eye, as a way of absolving responsibility from ourselves. And I also think it's because of a lack of religion. It's a religious impulse. So people engage in a kind of idolatry, and it serves this strange psychological function that I don't fully understand. But I want to say, look, it's about the ideas, the ideals, the philosophy, and it behooves you to hold yourself to a standard. Don't think because you've said, David Goggins is amazing, he's so fit, he's so blah, 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 but I could never do that. That's the wrong way to interact with the avatar of David Goggins. David Goggins is saying, get out of bed and go for a fucking run. So please get out of bed and go for a run. But people don't en masse use him like that. They go, he's amazing, I could never do it, and then forget about it. And I don't want to be that guy. I want people
But you can't avoid being that guy. That's not in your control.
I can kick and scream and fight and tantrum.
Right? Like people are going to project onto you whatever they're going to project onto you.
To a degree, that's true, yes. To a degree.
Right.
To a degree.
People turn us into all kinds of things. And so in some sense, there's like no way to avoid it. And I wonder, like, I guess the question is that reticence to be seen in that way? And I understand why. Of course, I understand why. And it's an admirable position, and it's like you wanting to keep yourself humble. But there's like a fine line between, like, I'm going to keep myself humble, but am I also making myself small, or am I diminishing my power in some way that it's not entirely useful for me? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear that. That what I try to do as much as I can these days is to access authenticity. And this ties back in with the masculinity issue. Younger guys will often say to me, how do you be masculine? How are you masculine? And my typical answer would be something along the lines of, I am a man, I just stop editing it. Or you are a man. I can't make you more of a man than you are. Just stop editing it. Just be that. And that's actually hard.
Are you editing it? Are you?
We all are.
We all are. How are you fully expressed? Are you holding back? Are there ways that you? You say a lot. You're bold. You're a good teacher. Is there a fear? Is there more?
Oh yeah, there's more. For sure, there's more. I wouldn't say the kinds of things that Andrew Tate has said, for example. I wouldn't go that far because of fear. There's things that he said that I just don't agree with, but
sure,
he's obviously at times he's playing a role. So it's the character of Andrew Tate that's saying the things that he's saying, not Andrew Tate himself. But yes, I'm self-editing, for sure. I'm self-editing. I'm being careful and I'm biding my time.
Because that's the most effective, biding your time?
Yeah.
Biding your time for what?
I am trying to be an infectious virus at a mimetic level inside of the counterculture that is going to protect us and guide us away from the harshest elements of far right-wing white nationalism that is on the horizon in America and the United Kingdom.
And the way that you're showing up in this space, you feel is the best strategy to do that.
Yes.
You don't need to be Andrew Tate. There's already an Andrew Tate.
Correct.
So we need you, people like you. That tracks for me.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, but you have to be there's a lot of landmines to avoid, because you can put out one video and discredit yourself completely. At least in my position, I could. So, after watching this interview, people are like, oh, this guy's conservative. I am left of center. I am a classical liberal.
Yeah.
I am exactly where Jordan Peters is on the political compass. I'm an opportunity Democrat. I believe I'm socially pretty conservative, but I believe that everybody should have a chance to flourish, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of age, regardless of sexuality. Very much a live and let live person, very much a person for small government. And so you have to be careful in these highly politicized times, though, because based on what, like, you could pull out 5 key points of what I've said casually in this interview, and in the modern leftist hysteria, you'd be like, this guy's a Nazi. Look at his haircut.
Yeah.
He's got a haircut like him there. He's clearly fucking a Nazi.
That haircut is a little Nazi.
It is a little Nazi. Plus I'm always wearing black and, So I'm very frightened, sincerely, for what the next 10 years will bring. And I'm worried about gulags and genocide. I'm just about to finish a book called It Could Never Happen Here, about the rise of Nazism in America, that was written in 1934, I think. And it's very strangely, it has an uncanny ability to predict certain coordinates of the future that we're entering into today in 2024. So I don't believe I'm a hysterical nutcase. I think there is a real chance of ultra far right white nationalism rising up and us facing gulags and genocide. And the way to combat that, I think, is to sort of soften the space in this highly polarized environment and try to bring a degree of unity, nuance, and specificity and the Socratic method back into the dialogue so that people on the extremes of the spectrum don't feel unheard and unseen and aren't driven through resentment to engage in overcompensatory, grandiose acts of violence.
Do you think that's going to work?
No, I'll probably fail, but like I'll be in the concentration camp. I tried. I did my best.
I didn't mean that to be challenging. Just like, can that work? Like that is exactly, I think, the way to approach it. And we need more people like you out there trying to find the nuance, trying to bring connection. And you've also said that this is inevitable on some level.
It is.
That we're too far gone.
It is. And that's to come back to an earlier point that I missed is I'm in the process of moving to Spain so that I can live on a farm, so that I can foster dogs, and so that I can spend most of my time in nature just listening to the birds. Because none of us know how much time we have left. None of us know which way the world is going to go. You don't want to be plugged into this stuff all of the time.
Yeah.
Things are coming, things are changing, and I would like to have done something.
Yeah. Well,
excuse me.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you're saying. I agree with you. I do think this is inevitable. Having read The Fourth Turning and watching Ray Dalio's videos on the changing world order, and then the astrologers talking about Pluto returns, and there's a lot of forces that we don't understand that are at play, and so I think this is just what happens, and it's a little scary, obviously, because and also the technology that's out there. I mean, we built systems to support a society that no longer exists. So those systems have to come crumbling down, and how it is. It's like my own journey. I didn't heal. I didn't rebuild myself until I hit rock bottom. There was a lot of pain, a lot of anger, and a lot of despair. And so it's almost like to heal, to grow, to evolve, the culture, the world may have to go through that to get to the other side. And so we're just in the middle of this, and it goes back to what I was saying about, there's no separation between the light and the dark. I guess I get upset. I'm like, that's bullshit. What the fuck? Stop that. I mean, I can see it and I can get engaged in it. And obviously if war breaks out, I think you got to choose a side. I don't know. Maybe you don't. Or you go to Spain and
do you know they're talking,
I want to choose a side because I love war.
They're talking about conscripting Brits today in the news.
What?
Today.
For what?
For any war that could break out. It's in the news today. Our army, they've had a recruitment problem for years, and it's now shrunk in size by a third. We only have a small army anyway. And they're talking about conscription. These are the times we live in. This is real. People have been saying I'm an alarmist and a hysterical for years, and now they're talking about conscripting British people in the UK for the army. That's the reality.
I really appreciate all the things that you said. I never thought, as I said earlier, I was grateful that somebody said it, and also said it in the way that you said it, with a lot of nuance and compassion, understanding. And I think it is happening, and I don't think there's much we could do about it. I'm glad you're out there doing what you can do. I mean, that's what I'm doing too, is you try to wake people up as much as you can and create connection and community, give people solace, and
get like a big room in the gulag. Like, I think if we're doing therapy for the high ranking officers, we might get extra bread on a Thursday.
No, man, I had a Green Beret. Back when I was an actor, we had this director of photography who was a Green Beret, and he said, former Green Beret in Vietnam, and he said, if they come to take you away, it's like you don't let them take you, you fight. It's like, that's that moment, you die then.
That's a really good piece of advice. I got similar advice from a guy who'd worked with the FBI, and he said all of the statistics say if the kidnapping is happening, all of the violence, torture, and rape happens at the secondary crime scene.
That's
so when you watch a movie and they point a gun at you and say, get in the van, don't get in the van. Die there.
No, don't get in the van.
Just die right fucking there without having your teeth pulled out first and your fucking fingers chopped off. Just die in the street in front of witnesses.
I think that's the perfect place to end it.
Wonderful.
That is the wisest thing that's been said. I'm kidding. Richard, you really are, and I'm not just, I want you to receive this.
I will.
You're incredible, and just so articulate, so thoughtful, so nuanced. And I just love what you're doing in the world. I've been a fan for a long time, and I'll continue to be a fan. And I'm just really grateful that you were willing to sit down and talk with me. And I hope it was fun for you, because it was a lot of fun for me.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me on.
And when you're in Austin, Texas, I got you. Are we
going to go to the Joe Rogan Comedy Club together?
We can. Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that.
You give me a heads up when you're coming to town, and I'll get tickets, and we'll
awesome.
We'll do a night.
Perfect. All right, mate. Thank you very much.
All right, mate.